Sometimes the most memorable moments in cinema are born not from the director's genius plan, but from pure chance. There is a script, there are storyboards, the actors learn their lines, and the director yells, "Camera, action," and pretends that everything is going according to plan. But here's the problem. The plan on the set lasts about 20 seconds. Then someone inevitably stumbles, someone else forgets their lines, and the props fall apart faster than the producer's faith in the director. It is in moments like these that the coolest scenes are born. The paradox is that what was supposed to be a mistake sometimes turns into pure gold. A take that logically should have been discarded remains in the film. And it is precisely this that makes the scene real. The most interesting thing is that the viewer never knows where the plan ends and chance begins. For them, everything looks like the author's idea. But within the film crew, everyone understands perfectly well. We just filmed a failure, but we got a story. This is the real magic of cinema, when a mistake turns out to be stronger than the perfect take. Hollywood, of course, hates such things, and studios love order, schedules, graphs, budgets, 500 pages of reports. But cinema doesn't work like a factory. It always breaks out. The camera jerks, the actor laughs, someone in the frame does something wrong, and at that moment, the film ceases to be a perfect product and suddenly becomes alive. At such moments, the viewer feels the truth. A line spoken off script sounds more honest. A fall that no one expected looks more natural. Everything looks too vivid to be a planned scene. Honest laughter, excruciating pain, a reaction that wasn't in the script. But it is precisely these moments that remain in our memory. And the funny thing is that it is these mistakes that become legendary. What was filmed as a failure is later quoted, parodied, and turned into memes. They begin to live their own lives, going beyond the boundaries of the film. And no one remembers that it was a pure accident during filming. In this video, I would like to talk about such takes, the ones that weren't supposed to make it into the final version but did, and made the film stronger. Sometimes chaos works better than a script. Sometimes a mistake turns out to be worth more than 100 takes. Because cinema is not just a plan. It's also chance. And chance, as we know, sometimes shoots better than any director. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight continues the story of Batman, who faces a new enemy, the anarchist Joker. Gotham is sinking into chaos, and the struggle becomes not only a physical confrontation, but also a test of the hero's morals and limits. And among the film's dark scenes, there is one small but very telling detail. When the Joker is arrested and brought to the cell, Commissioner Loeb announces Jim Gordon's promotion to commissioner. The entire room of police officers begins to applaud. Suddenly, a slow, mocking clap comes from the darkness of the cell. It was Heath Ledger. The script did not call for any applause from the Joker. He was supposed to just sit and watch. But Ledger, who was already completely immersed in the character, decided to add this gesture. He claps not because he is genuinely happy. It is mockery. It is an acknowledgement of Gordon's game, as if the Joker is sitting in a theater, enjoying the performance unfolding around him. Christopher Nolan did not stop the take. On the contrary, he realized that this little improvisation perfectly revealed the character's psychology. The Joker is not just an anarchist, he is also a spectator of the chaos he himself creates. So the applause, born of the actor's instinct, became one of the darkest and most memorable moments of the film. Apocalypse Now is a film in which the Vietnam War is depicted not as an operation with flags and parades, but as a crazy psychedelic trip down a river, where the further you float, the more it seems that someone has taken your brain out and fried it in the sun. Captain Willard, played by Martin Sheen, is tasked with finding and destroying Colonel Kurtz. In essence, this means sending one madman to kill another, even madder one. And this is where the story with the mirror begins. At the beginning of the film, Willard sits in a hotel room, drunk and broken, looking at his reflection. The scene was supposed to be dark but controlled. But it was impossible to control Martin Sheen at that moment. He was really drunk on set. So much so that when he hit the mirror with his hand, he actually broke it and cut his palm. The blood in the shot is not makeup, but real. Francis Ford Coppola wanted to stop filming and call a doctor, but Sheen refused. He continued acting, smearing blood on his face and saying that this was Willard. The cameras did not stop rolling. The result was a scene in which it is impossible to separate the actor from the character. This episode lasts only a couple of minutes, but it sets the tone for the film. Because Apocalypse Now is not about war as a chronicle, it is about war, where reality and nightmare are mixed to such an extent that even on camera no one understands where the role ends and life begins. In general, the filming of this movie was a nightmare in itself, with the entire crew doubting that it would ever be released. The irony is that one of the most powerful scenes in the film happened by accident, simply because the actor really lost control. There are actors who spend their entire lives playing good guys, romantic heroes, and perfect hunks. And the audience knows in advance, here we go again. He's going to save the girl, look into her eyes, and ride off into the sunset. But sometimes a role comes along that shatters that image to smithereens and turns the actor into a monster. And then, Leonardo DiCaprio appears on the set. Until this moment, his career has been filled with romantic heartthrobs and pompous heroes. But here he plays Calvin Candy, a wealthy sadist who smiles as if he is about to sign your death warrant. The plot of the film is as simple as a duel at dawn. A bounty hunter and a former slave team up to rescue the hero's wife from the clutches of Candy himself. Along the way, there is blood, half an hour of conversation, and Tarantino's signature, let's make it even tougher. And in the dinner negotiation scene, something happens that will later be included in textbooks on failed takes that changed everything. According to the script, DiCaprio is supposed to explode emotionally, slam his fist on the table, and scare everyone around him. In reality, he hit so hard that his palm went through the glass and the glass shattered into blood. Real blood, not fake. Leo looks down. His hand is cut, bleeding, but he continues to act. He starts screaming, waving his arm, staining the napkins and table with his blood. No one understands. Is this the plan? Or is he really about to lose consciousness? In one take, he decided to smear it all over the face of Kerry Washington, who played Django's wife. This wasn't in the script either. The actress's eyes widened for a second, but she never broke character. Quentin Tarantino was delighted. He realized that the moment was so vivid that no makeup or staging could compare. So not only did they keep the take, but they made it central to the scene. Leo was later stitched up, and viewers got one of the most gruesome scenes in the film, shot without stunt doubles, CGI, or safety nets. Just an actor, glass, and an accident that became cinema. The plot of The Two Towers can be summed up in 2 lines. Frodo and Sam are still lugging the ring around in a place where Wi-Fi died a long time ago, and cell service is basically a myth, while the other characters are busy fighting off orcs and trying not to die too quickly. It all ends with the siege of Helm's Deep, where 3-meter-tall orcs run up the wall, and the viewer thinks, how did they even film that? It was difficult to film, especially for Viggo Mortensen, who played Aragorn. In one scene, he had to kick an orc's helmet, dramatically, with rage and pain in his heart. Only it turned out that the pain was not in his heart, but in his finger, or rather, in 2 fingers. Viggo breaks his leg, falls to his knees, and screams as if his character has just learned that Netflix has canceled The Rings of Power. Any normal director would say, stop, let's cut it, reshoot it, and send the actor to the medical center. But Peter Jackson looked at Viggo, who was really writhing in pain, and said, brilliant, let's keep it. As a result, the scene remained in the film, and millions of viewers still believe that it is Aragorn mourning his slain friends, not Viggo cursing all the shoes in the world. That's how an accidental injury became a canonical emotion in an epic that took 3 years to shoot, and on whose set everything broke: swords, armor, actors, and mental health. Sometimes a great scene doesn't need a director's vision, but simply an actor who accidentally broke his finger. Mrs. Doubtfire is a film about a man who loves his children so much that he is willing to dress up as an old British woman and work as their nanny. Or, to put it simply, Robin Williams, wearing a wig and a dress, spends 2 hours explaining that anything is possible for the sake of family, even if it means shaving your legs and saying, "My little darlings," with an accent. And here is one of the most iconic scenes, the kitchen. Williams' character is almost exposed, and in order to hide his face without makeup, he panics and slaps himself right into a cake. The plan was to put a little cream on his face, say a couple of funny lines, and that's it. But it turned out differently. Robin dipped his head into the cake, straightened up, and began to improvise. The old woman's mask turned out to be comically sticky. Her eyes were under a layer of cream, her nose was white, and her voice was still cheerfully nanny-like. And then, something happened that was definitely not in the script. A piece of cream began to melt and slowly slid from his chin straight into his teacup. The actors at the table almost burst out laughing, as did the film crew, but Williams didn't stop. He continued to speak in his nanny voice, pretending that this was the plan all along. The phrase, "You've got your cream and sugar now," was born right there on set. Director Chris Columbus watched the footage and realized that there was no point in reshooting it. The accidental comedic chaos turned out better than any prepared joke. As a result, the scene remained in the film and became one of the most memorable. There are films that immediately declare, "You will believe in fairy tales." The Princess Diaries is one of them. The story of how an ordinary schoolgirl suddenly finds herself a princess sounds like fan fiction written during a boring math class, but that's exactly what worked. Viewers believed that somewhere in San Francisco there really could be an heir to the throne who wears a sweater with pilling and doesn't know how to talk to people properly. And then, to make us believe in her awkwardness completely, fate threw in a bonus, a take that no one had planned. The scene with the stands. On paper, it's simple. Mia walks up the steps, says something, looks slightly embarrassed. On set, it turned out to be more fun. The steps were slippery after the rain, like an amusement park for mosquitoes. Anne Hathaway takes a step, then another, and the steps after the rain are so slippery that Anne Hathaway slips and crashes down with a bang, right in front of the camera. Everyone on set froze for a second. Her actress friend almost forgot her lines. The sound engineer looked up from the console, and the cameraman instinctively jerked the camera, thinking the take was ruined. But Anne herself laughed and immediately got up, as if it had been planned. It looked so natural that director Gary Marshall decided not to cut the fall. As a result, this accident made it into both the film and the trailer, because no rehearsal can replace a real fall, where the actress looks exactly as her character should, awkward, funny, and yet completely alive. This moment made Mia's image closer to every viewer. After all, everyone has had such steps at some point. Usually, there are people who prefer to sleep at night. Slightly less common are those who go to clubs. And then there is Lou Bloom, a man for whom the darkness of the city has become his working hours. He has no friends, no stable job, but he has eyes that burn like an owl's and a thirst to prove that you can sell literally anything in the world, even death on the side of the highway. Nightcrawler shows this character without compromise. Lou is not a villain in a cloak, nor a hero in a mask. He is a guy with a camera who is the first to arrive at the scene of the most terrible events. And the more terrible the event, the higher the price for the footage. Television pays. Lou smiles. Viewers eat breakfast while watching bloody images. Everything is fair, according to his logic. But the main shot was not born in the script, but right on the set. In the scene where Lou returns home after his failure, Jake Gyllenhaal starts yelling at himself in the mirror. According to the plan, it was supposed to be anger expressed in words, a restrained breakdown. But the actor went further. He punched the glass so hard that it shattered into pieces, and his hand was immediately covered in real blood. The film crew froze. Everyone waited for the command cut. But Gyllenhaal, with his palm cut open, continued to play, staying in character. The camera captured everything. At that moment, Lou Bloom ceased to be a fictional character. He became a living person, ready to go to the end for the sake of his obsession. After the take, the actor was taken to the hospital, where he received a whopping 42 stitches. And the next day, as if nothing had happened, Jake Gyllenhaal returned to the set to continue playing his role. To hide the injury, the film crew shot the first scenes of the film where the actor's hands were not visible and used special crutches and pads to disguise the cast. The scene remained in the film because no acting school can provide the authenticity that comes from an accidental blow and real pain. In short, The Usual Suspects is a film in which 5 criminals find themselves in a lineup. Each of them looks like they are definitely guilty, but no one knows anything. As a result, the story begins about the mysterious Kaiser Soze, an evil genius whom everyone has heard of but no one has seen. Spoiler alert, the ending is mind-boggling. Now, let's talk about how the film almost fell apart because of something as trivial as bouquets. Yes, I'm not kidding. There is a cult scene in the film where the gangsters are lined up in front of the police and forced to say the same phrase. The task is simple. Stand there, look stern, and speak up. But Benicio del Toro had other plans that day. His character turned out to be vague, with an accent and mumbling, as if he himself didn't understand what he was saying. And then fate decided to add a special effect. Right in the middle of the takes, Benicio started letting out quiet whispers. The actors nearby tried to keep a straight face, but it was impossible. They were laughing like schoolchildren in the back row. Kevin Spacey rolled his eyes, Gabriel Byrne covered his mouth with his hand, and Stephen Baldwin almost fell out of the frame. Director Bryan Singer initially attempted to restore order. "Get it together, damn it! This is serious noir." However, the angrier he became, the louder the laughter grew. In the end, they never managed to get a perfect take. The camera captured all the chaos, the giggles, the crooked smiles, and the teasing. And you know what? The scene made it into the movie because it gave the characters a liveliness that couldn't have been planned in advance. It seemed like a failure, but in the end, it became one of the audience's favorite scenes. All great stories start with something strange. Someone falls down the stairs, someone accidentally burns a script, and someone gets punched right in the ear. In Hollywood, this kind of thing is usually cut out, but not this time. Fight Club is a film about how a boring office worker meets a charismatic soap salesman, and together they create a club where men beat each other up instead of going to therapy. Over time, the club grows into something more, and it turns out that it's all a little stranger than it seemed at first glance. The ending is a classic, leaving viewers with their eyes wide open as they left the theater. But one of the funniest and most painful scenes in the film appeared by accident. Remember the moment when Edward Norton's character meets Tyler Durden for the second time at a bar and they decide to have their first fight? According to the script, Norton was supposed to hit Brad Pitt. Nothing special, it would seem. But director David Fincher, known for his love of tormenting actors and viewers, whispered to Norton, "You know what? Hit him in the ear, Edward." Being a responsible guy, did just that. He punched him right in the ear, without warning. Brad Pitt's reaction was not an actor's reaction. He really cried out, "He hit me in the ear," and grabbed his head. The camera captured everything. Fincher rubbed his hands together happily and said, "Great, let's keep that." That's the take that made it into the film, because no script can replace real pain and a genuine reaction. And in the end, the scene became one of the most vivid in the film. The moment when the two characters go from being casual acquaintances to comrades in arms. Imagine, you are sitting quietly at dinner, chatting with colleagues, everything is going as usual, and suddenly something starts bursting out of your friend's chest. This is how viewers, in 1979, first encountered one of the most terrifying moments in film history. Ridley Scott's film, in which the crew of the cargo ship Nostromo encounters an alien creature, looked like ordinary science fiction on paper, but on screen, it turned into a pure nightmare. The film was given a simple title, Alien. And then there was the main scene that made the film a legend. The one with the chestburster John Hurt plays poor Kane, who has a little monster inside him. According to the script, it was supposed to burst out at the dinner table. It seemed simple enough, a little makeup, liters of fake blood, a mechanical doll. But Ridley Scott wanted more. He wanted to truly shock the actors. The actors were told, "Now there will be a dinner scene, nothing special." No one warned them that John Hurt's stomach would actually explode. When the mechanical monster burst through his chest and a fountain of blood sprayed everyone around, the crew's reaction was not acting. Veronica Cartwright, who played Lambert, screamed as if she were really being killed. Her face was covered in blood, and that shock was captured on camera. Scott deliberately kept everything secret in order to get exactly that reaction. And he got it. Panic, screams, and genuine horror. No one was acting. Everyone was simply experiencing a collective nightmare. That's why the scene with the chestburster became one of the most iconic in film history. These aren't special effects, it's pure trauma captured on camera. The plot of Scream can be described as simply as possible. A maniac in a white mask appears in a quiet American town, who calls on the phone and asks questions about horror movies. If you answer incorrectly, you lose a life. That is, it is not so much a horror movie as a quiz with a deadly outcome. Now for the best part. The film's finale is the moment when Sidney Prescott, Neve Campbell, finally fights back against one of the killers, Billy Loomis, Skit Ulrich. According to the script, everything was supposed to be beautiful. Sidney Prescott was supposed to take an umbrella and stab Billy Loomis with it, neatly, lightly, so that it looked convincing, but no one was hurt. The plan was simple. A blow to the shoulder, the hero screams, falls, the audience is satisfied. But Neve, let's say, got too into her role. In one take, she stabbed Ulrich right in the chest with the umbrella, in the very spot where he had recently had surgery. The actor's reaction was so convincing that director Wes Craven decided, why reshoot? Let it stay. As a result, in the final version of the film, we see not acting, but real pain. Skeet falls, screams, his face contorts. And all this is not a Hollywood trick, but pure physiology. In essence, this is a case where life gave the film the best take. Ulrich later admitted that he was ready to strangle his partner, but he understood that it only made the film better. And viewers who watch the scene still think, now that's acting. The moral is simple. If you're an actor in a horror movie, always check where your colleague's last stitch was. Otherwise, your scream will turn out to be the most realistic one in the shot. When viewers watch The Shining, they think the film is scary because of its corridors, music, and ghosts. But the real horror wasn't happening on screen, but behind the scenes, right during filming. Kubrick wasn't just making a movie, he was conducting a psychological experiment on the actors and testing how many takes it would take to break a person. Take the iconic scene with the axe. According to the plan, Jack Nicholson was supposed to chop through the door and stick his head through the crack. Any other director would have said, let's do 5 takes, maybe 10, and then we'll choose the best one during editing. Kubrick decided that 10 was just a warm-up. A whole warehouse full of doors was brought in. Nicholson smashed them one after another, yelling, sweating, chopping, while Shelley Duvall screamed on the other side the whole time. So much so that at one point she stopped acting. She was genuinely afraid. By the 100th take, Shelley was barely holding on. Her eyes were sunken, her hands were shaking, her voice was failing. And that was exactly what Kubrick wanted to capture. Not acting, but real hysteria. And Nicholson himself suddenly improvised in a burst of inspiration. He stuck his head in and yelled, "Here's Johnny." This line wasn't in the script, but it fit the moment so perfectly that it became one of the most recognizable moments in film history. In fact, Jack simply remembered the popular Johnny Carson show, where the host introduced him every night with the same line, "Here's Johnny." Everyone in the US knew this phrase, but Kubrick, who lived in England, didn't even understand the reference. But he understood something else. The scene was finally perfect. The scene was included in the film exactly as it was, with real panic, real exhaustion, and a phrase that was born by accident. And so the failed takes turned into a nightmare, not only for the heroine, but also for the actors, who had to go through hell for the sake of one perfect shot. There are films that try to look as if they were shot in one breath. It's not that the cameraman actually runs a kilometer without stopping, but the illusion is created, as if the camera and the actor are connected by an umbilical cord and are rushing across the field while the viewer sits in a chair and thinks, well, at least someone is doing sports for me. That's what 1917 was like, a film where the whole meaning can be explained in 2 words. 2 men are walking, and the whole hell of war revolves around them like a backdrop. And then, at the most tense moment, George McKay had to run along the trench while bombs exploded around him and soldiers got up and ran into battle. The camera flies after him, time passes, and the take costs as much as an ordinary person would earn in a lifetime. Everything is timed down to the second, but there is always a little enemy on set, chance. And that chance hit the actor right in the chest, literally. A soldier in the crowd jumped out of place and knocked George off his feet like a drunk fan at a derby. Any other actor would have collapsed, cursed, and ruined the take. But McKay, as if he had been taught as a child to fall and get up at the same time, didn't just get up, he kept running. And with such desperation that the viewer believed, the hero is wounded, dying, but still carrying out his damn order. The irony is that this scene was rehearsed a dozen times and everything went perfectly, not a single mistake until they started filming. And this mistake became the heart of the scene. No staging would have looked so realistic, because war is chaos. And when chaos accidentally hits the main character in the chest and he still continues, it's no longer cinema, it's reality. And here, we return to the question, is a perfect take really necessary? According to Stanley Kubrick, yes it is, and then some, just in case. He could make an actor walk down a corridor 100 times until they stopped being an actor and turned into a broken robot. The Shining is the best example of this. Shelley Duvall cries so naturally, not because she's a great actress, but because she was forced to cry for 6 months straight until she forgot how to smile. For Kubrick, it was art. For everyone else, it was torture, which for some reason was released to the public. But here's the irony. Even Kubrick's most iconic moments were often born by accident. That very, "Here's Johnny," didn't exist in the script. Jack Nicholson just remembered Carson's late-night show, stuck his head in the hole, and shouted. Kubrick, a man who could measure the movement of a cup to the millimeter, suddenly left pure improvisation in the film. And it was this improvisation that became the hallmark of the scene. It turns out that even the most pedantic director in history depended on chaos, and that's actually the truth about cinema. You can be a control freak like Kubrick, a chaotic experimenter like Raimi, or a pragmatist like Nolan. The result is the same. The viewer will still remember not the shooting schedule, but the moment when someone unexpectedly came to life on camera. Because art is not mathematics. It is always a bit of an accident. Hollywood, of course, pretends to control the entire process. There are budgets, reports, Excel spreadsheets where even coffee on set is listed as a separate line item. But it is precisely where this system fails that magic is born. Duvall's scream, which is actually a hysterical outburst. Norton's punch to Pitt's ear, which was completely unplanned. The Joker's claps, which did not exist in the script. These are all examples of how cinema is better when it ceases to be a product and becomes a human error. And perhaps that is the main lesson. Even if you are Stanley Kubrick and spend years on one film, viewers will still quote, not your perfectly constructed shots, but a random scream through a door crack, a mistake that outlived the ideal. This means that the magic of cinema is not only in the plan, but also in the chaos. And as long as chaos finds its way into the frame, we will always have something to watch, quote, and rewatch. And at this point, this Hollywood chaos wraps up. If you want more stories about brilliant failures and accidental masterpieces, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Let it ring louder than Jack Nicholson at the door, and we'll see you in the next take.